Hey, you guys, welcome back to Brownie's Judgment. I'm your host, Zuli, and today I wanted to talk about what are the three main lessons or aspects that I learned about life because of the past relationships that I was in. So, I'm going to be going over three. Of course, I won't be giving names or specific huge details, but what I will talk about in the sense of the generality of the relationship and in a sense kind of what happened in to where I needed to learn a certain lesson or how I learned that certain lesson. So the first one I'm going to go over is the relationship. So this is going to be number 1 that taught me about values. So values, this wasn't something I really thought about too much because this relationship was how do I say it? In like in school still, like before college and everything. So I feel like I still was learning a lot about myself in a sense, but I think the reason why I feel like values was what I learned is because until I was in that relationship, I hadn't understood what that was or why it was important in a relationship, and because of things that had happened, that's the reason why values became something that I would carry on to even these next two relationships. That values was something that I needed to make sure was aligned, from the very beginning. And the reason why I feel like values in this sense is important to me, at least, is because it also helped indicate, where one is in life, the pacing and how they view the world and stuff like that, because of based upon what you value in life, whether that be education or whatever. I think that has a big opportunity to either make or break a relationship based off of if the relationship does or does not have the same values, at least for the most part, right? In certain individuals. I think the first and biggest one that I can think about as far as that relationship goes was the differing views on religion. And the reason why I say that is because this person came from like an Asian background, so there was a lot of different discrepancies as far as what was tolerable in the culture and what was normal and what was not okay, and even like the way people carry themselves, but I think because it was so different, I was able to explore a whole different culture that I otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to. I tried a lot of different foods, and I got to try like a different dance and explore a different type of, you know, fashion and, all of that. But I think the reason why I mentioned religion is because for some people, for me at the time, it really wasn't, but I didn't really think about it too much, but I guess in a sense for some people it could be the absolute foundation for someone's outlook on life and how they conquer hard circumstances and all of that, So religion for a lot of people can be a sort of found stabilizer when it comes to that, sort of stage in one's life. And I think that I realize that religion is just one aspect of many. You know what I mean? I think another value could be is I think I mentioned it briefly already, was education. And I knew that maybe this person and I had similar sort of aspirations to go to college and stuff like that. And that was good, but maybe, for someone else, they're pursuing a college education and someone that they're interested in isn't. So maybe it makes them feel misunderstood, or vice versa. The person that is questioning doesn't have a college education, and then maybe they're comparing themselves in like a bad way and stuff like that compared to um And oftentimes, what I have noticed is not necessarily in a sense of, how do I say it? Of what it's meant to be in a sense. But usually people, and it's, statistical data, they tend to come from similar socioeconomic background, religious background, and stuff like that. And then, it kind of makes sense. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have every single same value, but I think the reason why it's important is because you can understand one another more. I'm not saying that uh these relationships can never work out, right? Because you can learn a lot. Um but I think what's important is that certain values, like, for instance, if you're the type to want to be in a monogamous relationship and you value that, you need to make sure that the person you're with isn't pushing you otherwise. Or if this person is more into dominating in a relationship, some people are into that, whatever, and you're not, then that's not going to work out. Or if this person values, whatever, like, I mean, there's a ton of different values within a relationship and stuff like that that people like, some people don't. Like, it can be small things like, oh, I don't like it if my boyfriend plays video games, or oh, I don't like it if my boyfriend something bigger, like I don't like if my boyfriend would smoke, or I don't like if my girlfriend would drink, just like you're allowed to have those values that you have within yourself, that sort of like, in a sense, like standards of what you would or wouldn't tolerate. Sorry. And I think that it's important to be able to fully express that and be upfront and honest with that in the beginning, because that's truly, those values at the end of the day is what's going to help drive it or break the relationship. So again, that main one for me that I learned from that first one was the values. And the second one that I learned was communication. And the reason why I say communication is because communication actually is deeper than just telling someone about your day and telling them, oh my goodness, like I feel this way, I'm frustrated about this, or this person ticked me off, or I feel really sad about this because someone said that, or I'm questioning this. Like, it's more about than talking about your hopes and your dreams and your fears and your insecurities. It's deeper than that. A sense of communication comes with vulnerability of to the other person that you're not as strong or put together or doing quote unquote okay as you would like for them to believe. And this is something that I had experienced because I think in the second relationship that I'm talking about, it wasn't necessarily oil and water as far as the dynamic goes, but I would say that because of lack of communication or passive aggressiveness on both ends, I think that that's what caused those tiny micro sort of tensions between the two of us in the relationship, and this communicative style that we had adopted of trying to undermine things or trying to overmine things or whatever. That communication ultimately is what led the relationship to end the way it did. And I think that whenever, and mind you, I'm still in my approaching my mid or early my mid 20s. I don't know what you consider the age I am, but still it's just kind of like in a sense of, when you're young you make a lot of mistakes, so I'm trying to give myself some grace in a sense of, whenever this person and I met, um I was in the two previous and even the next one I'm going to talk about, still learning a lot about myself. So I think that unfortunately sometimes for most people we have to make those mistakes and learn from them in order to be able to become, better partners in the future. It's just a reality of, more often than not, people don't get it right in their teens and mid 20s. I mean, early 20s. So I think that depending on the goal that somebody has in a relationship, whether it's to be casual or more serious or whatever it is, um, I think that communication is, of course, you do want to tell them your hopes, your dreams, your desires, your insecurities and stuff like that, but like at a deep fundamental level, sorry, it's important that this person is let in on and not left behind, because when one person does it, the other person starts to do it too, because um it's easy to share the superficial things in the beginning, and um like quote unquote, oh, here are all of my cards, and this person believes that those are all your cards, but yet there's one really big one that you're holding close to your chest. And whether that be from trauma, whether that be from self-doubt or whatever, I think that communication is something that can be scary, but also totally worth it. I've heard this saying that you can never over communicate with your partner. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think I can necessarily say that I've had that experience, but I will say that that's taught me, with the combination of the first and the second one I'm telling you about, with the values and the communication. I think that now, when I was able to step into this third relationship, which I'll talk about that more, I was able to come into that relationship with saying, hey, this is what I value, this is the way I want to communicate, and um and how do you feel about that? Where are you, in a sense, with that? And the reason why I think that that's so important is because it helps you mature as an individual, not even necessarily in a relationship, but within yourself and other people that you could essentially have that communication with. And don't miss out on that. You know what I mean? Like, it's important to have the people in your life that you guys share values and you guys share that communication. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about making sure that we have this checklist that this person has to be this and this person has to be that. But no, but there also has to be that compatibility as well with this individual of like, hey, is it going to work out or is it not? And I think it's totally fine to be scared and question that, especially in the beginning stages. But ultimately, those values and that communication will sort of carry on into the next time. Okay, and the third and final relationship I wanted to talk about was in a sense of learning self-worth. And it's interesting because when this person came into my life, I was actively searching for it, for that connection with someone. And whenever this person came into my life, they showed up as a completely different individual versus the one I exited a relationship out of. And whenever this person started to show different signs, different mannerisms, or whatever, like, it was hard for me to mentally catch up, because I think that this facade was so perfectly played. And the brain can try to put pieces together, like, whoa, what's going on? I don't understand. And a lot of that has to do with masks that are worn, but I think this relationship really did take me down this sort of rabbit hole of, why are they doing this? How did this happen? What did I do? Do I deserve this? Why are they doing this to me? How did this happen? Just like a lot of like different thoughts like that. And I tried holding on to what the relationship was like in the beginning, if that makes any sense at all. Um, I really do want to say that, and I preface this by saying that everyone has, don't get me wrong, everyone has their own quote unquote thing that they need to heal from or whatever. Like, we're all broken in a sense of, we can heal as much as we can, but obviously we have like wounds inside of us that help shape us, whether positively or negatively. I get that. I really do. And I do believe that some of us maybe, if we compare ourselves to the person next to us, maybe we feel like we had an easier or harder upbringing. That's up to each individual perspective. But when someone, in a sense, shows up to a relationship asking and begging you as an individual that's already broken themselves to fix them and to feel bad for them because of a lack of self-work on their end, I think that can become very draining very quickly, very fast, very dangerous. Um it's very draining. And I think that since that was something I never had experienced before at the hands of someone, it really did take me off guard because I had fallen in love with I had spoken about this in a relationship. I mean, in an episode before. I want to say it's when you have a crush on someone or something like that. In the sense of like it hurts really really bad whenever you fall in love with a version of a person that genuinely doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And it's scary because whenever we think that we don't deserve sort of this love or whatever, and this person shows up with the love that we had always wanted, and then later on we realize that it wasn't what we had thought it was, then it's like, whoa, what happened? Where did it go? And that's a self-worth thing on both ends. It's a self-worth thing on the person who's doing the damage and the person that's receiving it, because I mean, of course there's not 100% sort of like blame, but I think whenever you experience a relationship with that, like that, in which the person makes you make questions their own self-worth and makes you question your own, I think that those can be a little difficult to recover from. It's not necessarily impossible, but whenever that happens, it truly like changes your outlook on life. Like I truly do feel like out of all the relationships that I've had, that one has taught me the most because of the places that I had went and had to step out of because of it. It made me, in a sense, realize that I'm much stronger than I thought I was. It made me realize um, what I never wanted again. It made me realize what I do want. It made me realize how important how important it is that I stick to my values. I had to relearn that. Like the thing that I learned from the first relationship, I had to relearn in this one too. And I also had to relearn the whole communication aspect from the second one, which I had learned years prior, but because, you know, the communication was skewed in this one, in this relationship that I'm talking about, the self-worth, I had to relearn all the lessons all over again. So I think that just because we learn a lesson in one relationship doesn't necessarily mean that it can't pop up again, or that or that we don't have to relearn it in another one, because sometimes that happens, and we're human, we regress, we make mistakes, we surround ourselves with someone that we thought was some way and that they weren't. You know what I mean? Like it's totally normal. It's part of the process. It's, give yourself compassion, give yourself grace, give yourself that sort of mercy in the sense of, you know what? I made a mistake. I looked for something. I thought it was something. It wasn't. Um, I thought this person was someone and they weren't, or this person, I thought we were aligned and we weren't. That ties into all three of, the values, communication, self-worth. I'm not going to excuse what they did or what I did, but what I will say is that I'm so grateful for what happened, and I don't take any of the pain that I experienced back, because it created me into the individual that I am today. I had been wanting to make a podcast for years and I never had because I didn't uphold the values, communication, self-worth in myself enough to say, hey, like, this is something that I really value. This is something I want to communicate with other people, that hey, like, this is the my 2 cents in whatever subject I'm talking about. And I have worth in myself enough to be brave enough to do something that's scary and that is challenging me and that's shaping me as an individual, you know? And I'm so grateful. And it's crazy for me to say that now, but I'm so grateful for the pain that I experienced. I'm grateful for the lessons that I've learned. I'm, even grateful for, the love that I experienced in the relationship at the times that it was there. Um, and in every single one of them, of course, the love had died out by the end, of course, because then it wouldn't, it just made it harder to be together. And as I talked about in the podcast, love isn't necessarily the only important thing, of course. It's one of the important things, but it's not the only one. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, but I think that these past relationships in general are difficult because this person has access to you in a way that no one else does, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. Um, And that can be very vulnerable, that can be very scary for people. And to anyone out there that experience any sort of um, acts from someone that were traumatic or abusive or anything like that, just like someone once told me, I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm not going to undermine it, what you went through. But if it's something that you want, you can love again. You can heal. You can grow, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. And when someone told me that, it was so hard for me to come to terms with. But now that I have taken in their words and have accepted what they said, it's been a huge part of my healing process. Any advice I would give really truly is to go back and really evaluate um if there's anything from the beginning of time in your life that evaluate from where you are now that has made you more susceptible to certain things or whatever, or what is it that you truly value in all of that. Just go on this whole self journey. Enjoy life, enjoy discovering parts of yourself, talking to people, whether romantically or not. Figure out what you do, you don't like, take those risks of talking to new people, and of course, evaluate, that discernment, that intuition feeling of whether you have a good sort of I don't want to say feeling, but that's the only word that I can think of right now about this person before jumping into it, right? But I say that, if you've really done the process of healing and growing, and like, that you're in a healthy place, I say to you, I say this to give you permission to step out into that again if that's something that you're scared about. Um I know dating is messy. I know dating is hard in this generation. I've watched and, listened to podcasts about it. But I don't want you to lose hope either. So like I said again as a recap, the three most important things that I've learned from the past relationships I was in were values, communication, and self-worth. That's going to be the end of our episode for today. Thank you so much, truly, for listening in and spending your time here on Brownie's Judgment. Catch you guys in the next one. And as always, God bless.